Iman, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam. Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, alhamdulillah. Good to meet you and see you for the first time. Welcome to Radio Al Ansar in South Africa. It's a pleasure having you and speaking to you and getting to know you as well. Of course, when you form a collaboration with somebody like Zain Bika, you automatically become our own. And we are now taking ownership of you, so we welcome you to Radio Al Ansar for that purpose as well. But let's get to know you a little bit better. What I love about you, and I have followed many Malaysian artists in the past, is you go as trilingual. So it's Arabic, and there's a beautiful appreciation for English as well, which you recite so beautifully. And then there's, of course, your home language, which we heard just now, your mother tongue. But tell us a little bit about who Iman Farrar actually was. Or are you the bedroom singer, the one that used to sing in the shower from the time you were a little girl? Are you a born and bred choir star? Tell us who you are, a little bit about you.
So when I was young, I was always singing, sometimes often very much nonsense. And then my parents would be playing some nasheeds all the time in the car, and I just like naturally pick it up. And so I guess that's kind of like where it all started. And then we moved around quite a lot. But when we got to Sydney, we found out about a Muslim kids club. And my mom was like, well, I think it's a good way for you to like, adapt to a new country and make some friends. And it's also something you really enjoy doing. And so we used to travel about an hour and a half to a nice small place called Bankstown where all the Muslims were. And then, yeah, they just started giving me some solos. And we'd sing all together as well. And I really didn't have any understanding of music or even very much about rhythm. It's just you kind of pick it up as you go along. And then at school, I would join choirs. I just really enjoyed singing. But then in 2013, I think it was, some of my videos went viral. And that's kind of how the journey really officially started. But yeah, so nice and small, humble beginnings.
No, definitely. Where there's a will, and I always say with most of the artists, when we hear the story behind how you actually find your way into the industry, it usually is something like that, where it's just like a domino effect, where one sort of thing just falls into place and your life comes full circle, where you're meant to be at the end of the day, alhamdulillah. But let's talk a little bit about Australian nasheed culture, because we just mentioned before this, Mohammed Yusuf is currently on tour there now as well. He's in Melbourne and he's going to be in Brisbane. We have South African artists that are currently there, also reciters that are there in Australia. How big is, or how valued is the nasheed industry there in Australia among the Australian people?
I think it's something that is not so obviously big, but everyone listens to it, if that makes sense. But it's definitely a growing industry, as it is all over the world. It's not as, I would say, like in Malaysia, for example, and perhaps South Africa too, it's very standard, it's very normal. It's almost as mainstream music. But in Australia, it's still very much a niche. But you do find, especially around big religious celebrations, for example, Maulid and Nabi, you do see a lot more of it happening in the public space as well. And people go to concerts and they go and really kind of use it as a way to congregate together and really enjoy that sense of community.
Definitely. And I love the Malaysian and Indonesians and their appreciation for nasheed. I think that's your capital for nasheed, definitely. The Indonesians or the Malaysians. And you'll find most of the artists tend to release Malaysian or Indonesian versions of their songs. Muhammad Tariq's in it, Muhammad Yusuf does it. And you see Mustafa Atif, for example, who's Egyptian, but he loves the Indonesian audience. Why do you think that is?
Well, because they treat it like it is really something they value, right? And it's not something that they just listen to in the car. It's something they go to. They actually make a physical effort to go to these things or to spread the word and to really share it around. And I think for a long time, it was such an untapped market, but it was such a huge part of the culture in and of itself. We have a lot of madrasas, we have a lot of places where people are learning all the time and they don't really want to be listening to music. So this is the alternative, right? And naturally, I think within our instinct as humans, we really enjoy a sense of melody and a sense of rhythm, and it really helps us feel a connection to Islam. And it helps us get closer. It softens the heart in many ways. And at the end of the day, what you're doing most of the time is either you're singing about a lesson that is taught within Islam, or you're singing salawat, right? So you're always in remembrance, and that's really the main thing about the culture, which I think really is captivated by Insha.
Absolutely. That is at the end of the day what the purpose of it is. And speaking of that, I cannot not speak to you without talking about the Maulid festival that you'll have every year. That is amazing. And if you're somebody that knows it, and I followed these events every single year, and it just gets bigger and bigger, and it's so beautiful to watch, especially when you'll have the multicultural aspect and each one coming in with their own unique style and persona. Tell us about that event and how did you get involved with that event and what is it like?
Yeah, so I was first asked to come and join the Maulid concert when they first started. And I think that was in 2011 was the first one, but 2012 was the first kind of bigger one. And we were singing Yan Taiba that year. And so they asked me to be the solo for that. And yeah, it kind of kept going, it kept growing as well. And people started hearing about it, and then it started getting really full. And then, especially pre-COVID, it was gaining a lot of momentum. And it really is, it's a beautiful event, and it's really professionally organized, and a lot of the hiccups that we usually see in the Muslim community don't happen on the day, alhamdulillah. So it's really nice, and it's a really wonderful thing to be a part of. With the multicultural aspect, you really see so many different types of cultures being represented, which is honestly, in my experience, quite rare in a Western country to see so many different cultures represented in one big event. And it really tells you how much Islam has spread, over all the nations, and how big it really is. It's not about where you come from, it's not about your culture, it's about how it's kind of permeated through all of these things, and it's transcended your culture. It's a binding motivation for all of us. So it's, everyone has their own style, everyone has their own musical style as well. So you'll see a lot of variation. Some traditions and cultures have a bit more movement and dancing. Some are a bit more like reserved, and that's all part of it. Part of really trying to represent the culture as much as possible. In some years, we had a play. It was called The Golden Script, and that was directed by Adam Ali, who is also a nasheed artist and also a producer. And he worked with a whole team, and they really had a full production. It was like a musical. It was fantastic, and they really incorporated the multicultural aspect into that. But after COVID, obviously, it was very hard to come back into something when something has such high momentum. But I think they're absolutely getting there again. Just like everything, society kind of stopped, right, in the middle of COVID. So getting back into the groove is kind of where we're at. But I'm really excited for this year. I don't know what's in store yet. So we're going to see next weekend, I believe.
Exciting. And inshallah, us on Radio Al Ansar, we're going to keep a close eye on that. We know that the GPU in the UK has returned after 10 years. So this one, I'm sure, is going to have a beautiful start as well, all over again post-COVID. It's amazing to think it's been a few years, but people are still only getting back into, especially with these large events, major events. But something I really love and that caught my eye, something that you put onto your social media as well. And this is so, people say Australia is very much like Durban, where we're from here in South Africa. So a lot of the things, I think that's why it relates, because you had this whole event kind of thing where you all are sitting on the sand and reading and durood and salawat. please tell us about that, because with Durban, our beach culture is very big. So when I
Yeah.
saw that, I said, that is something you would do here. That is so
Yeah.
something we could do here in Durban. Tell us about that. What did you guys do
So
there?
it was really wholesome. It was very wonderful. So a friend of mine, Anjum, she's the head of Desert Echo Drums. And she said to me, "Hey, let's do a really small, intimate little gathering with just the ladies, and we'll do it on the beach. I'll bring the dove. You do some singing, and then hopefully everyone like kind of joins in, and you just kind of we get to talk to people, we get to meet people, and it's a very um, intimate way of being able to connect with the community, and also just to meet new people in general. It's always such a nice thing to be doing. And yeah, so we just sat on the beach. She played some beats. I sang some nasheeds, and then yeah, we all kind of sung together, and it was very wholesome. And my little sister accompanied me as well, which was really nice. And I find it was very relaxing and heartwarming to have her support as well.
I think that's incredible, and I love that initiative. I think it's so beautiful, and if people do get to see it on your Instagram and stuff, the way you guys were literally just seated on a circle on the beach,
Yeah.
and I think that's so calming and so unpretentious, not worried, no sound effects, no nothing. It is just meant to be wholesome and bonding, and I think that's so beautiful. But let's talk now about your nasheeds itself. How would you describe your style of singing, or your work?
I think the styles have definitely changed over the years, and it really does vary between my original compositions, and also like what is made for the stage. Oftentimes, when you're singing on a big stage, you want something that's a bit more upbeat, something that's suited to the environment, and especially, for example, for a Maulid celebration, it's about celebrating the birth of the Prophet and also telling that story and reminding people about it. And yeah, but when I'm composing, I tend to get more into my feels, and kind of think about my own experiences and how I want to convey that, but also with how I've dealt with some hardships, for example. How can I either put a positive twist to it, or how can I use it to channel my emotions, and hopefully in a way that everyone understands too. And yeah, sometimes the experience is specific to everyone, and sometimes it's specific to the Muslim experience, isn't it? There's no there's no one way really about it. But the style, yeah, I don't know, it varies. Some people say it sounds a bit like Adele sometimes. Some people say it's giving Billy. Some people say, yeah, I don't know, some things that I've done before that like haven't been quite published yet. It's sounding very gospel, but we're like, oh, it's gospel, like Muslim gospel.
Gospel.
Um,
But
yeah,
it's
so
nice. You're still young also, so you're still discovering it. Yeah.
it's very much about experimenting, because sometimes,
Yeah.
honestly, like within the nasheed industry, it's a little bit restricted when it comes to style. People like a certain thing, they're used to a certain thing, and everything else is a bit like there's a bit of uncertainty, but there's also so much creativity amongst all the Muslims that work in it. So it's really about like trying to navigate into that sweet spot. And yeah, just sometimes you just try things and it works, sometimes you try things and it doesn't.
No, definitely. And I'm sure most of what you tried has worked so far pretty well. But I see also that you even doing something which is like Qasida learning. Are you teaching people about the Qasidas, and perhaps how important is it to actually introduce it to the younger generation? Maybe in this day and age where we have Spotify and SoundCloud, and so we are so easily exposed to mainstream music, to actually make nasheed and the understanding of qasidas, and the appreciation of it, to actually help the younger generation form their own attachment to it and want to listen to it. Is that what you find yourself having to do through with youngsters these days?
I mean, consider learning isn't something I usually go out of my way to teach, but I was approached by some people in Malaysia, and they said, "Hey, let's do this session." And I was like, you know what? It'll be my first time, but I'm always open to a new experience. I'm always open to trying new things. So I thought, why not? Let's give it a go. And it was honestly such a wonderful and beautiful event, because the purpose of it, it wasn't to judge anyone's ability to sing. It was to just simply get them involved, even if that meant like sometimes singling them out, making them sing on the spot, because I want to know what I'm working with too.
Yeah.
Some parts of qasida is like to actually just like sing with the group, and the other part of it is who can hold it a bit more, and do the more challenging runs, because at the end of the day there are chords, there are certain notes you have to hit, right? And it's all about working together. So it really brings you back to the tradition of, again, kind of like on the beach, sitting in a circle, singing together. And this is a really huge part, actually, of the Islamic nasheed tradition. And so it was really about that, and getting them familiar with the different types of songs, different types of styles. And we did a session with the kids, and then we did a session with the adult ladies as well. And the kids get very, very passionate about it very quickly. So having been through that experience myself when I was young, I think it's something that like is really important for a child, because they don't always understand big lessons and going to a dars, right? They don't understand sitting in a religious lesson, and they don't necessarily absorb any of it. They'll be a sponge and they'll take it in, but they won't absorb it. But for some reason with songs, and which is what's really beautiful about Zayn Bika's songs, is that they're very child friendly, right?
Yeah.
So they can digest that, and they're singing it, and they're singing it to you, and they're singing it everywhere they go. And they grow up. There are songs I know from when I was 5 years old that I've never heard it, like I haven't heard it in for maybe like 8, 9, 10 years. But I still remember all the lyrics, because rhythm helps you memorize, and it's so, so important. And especially in an age where we feel so disconnected, there's so much about this generation where we feel not just disconnected from each other, but we also feel disconnected from religion. And I think like just because something's on Spotify, it's not the same as being there where everyone is singing with you, and you're seeing people that you really like and you really love, and you're getting to know them, and it becomes a weekly thing. It's like going to school, or it's like, you know, going to your favorite after school club. It's very similar to this. When you enjoy it, you remember it.
Oh, with the only hope for more of something like that. And I think that definitely needs to be encouraged among the younger generation to just sit in a circle and sing the songs you know and love best. And it just increase that love, like you mentioned. But you mentioned his name now, Zayn Bika. So tell us, how did that relationship come about? How did you end up working together, and what was that like?
Well, it was a bit of a surprise to me, but I got a call from a friend, Bilal, and it was just very random, and he was like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I was like, "Hi," and then and then he was like, "Hey, are you interested in doing a collab with a South African artist?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, who?" And then he said, "Oh, Zanvika," and I was like, "Yeah, that sounds great." Like I did a cover before of Meloni, and like his songs tend to suit my voice really well. So I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And then I was in the UK at the time. I was just finishing off my exams, so yeah, there was like it was a bit tough to manage. Sorry, the other.
Wow.
I'm in Lebanon at the moment. I'm in Beirut. Um, yeah, so it's really, really nice having the adhan just every day at prayer time.
That
It's
sounds
such a
amazing.
yeah, it's so nice. So just give it a second.
Wow.
So I'm at the moment staying right opposite a mosque, so it's especially
You can
loud.
hear it sounds like the haram almost.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. But unfortunately, because of time, so
I'm
I'm
sure.
going to have to, yeah, I don't want to keep too long and so forth. But is there any future plans that what can we expect from Iman over the next few weeks?
So hopefully a few more releases. I've got some songs in the pipeline. I have a performance coming up on the 29th of September at the Multicultural Maulid concert. And then everything else always just comes as it comes. Yeah, so inshallah. But that's
Subhanallah. Iman, it was wonderful speaking to you and getting a feel. Next time we'll talk, inshallah, we'll get to talk more about your time there in Lebanon, what you're up to as well. Thank you for letting us hear that beautiful adhan as well. It was wonderful speaking to you, and we'll talk again soon, inshallah.
And you.
Assalamu alaikum. And that was Iman Farrar there joining us from Lebanon. Beautiful chat and conversation with her. You can hear that adhan even more beautifully on the outside.